Hi, and welcome back to the Mayor's Hour. I'm here with my friend Jack Harris again for another round of the Mayor's Hour, and it's this is our third one? Fourth one?
Our fourth, yeah.
We've been having so much fun, it goes by like nobody's business.
Where does the time go when you're having fun? That's true. Boy, I love where you picked today. This is great.
Yeah, this really is. This is one of the crown jewels in Tampa's waterfront. There's people I don't think really understand, Jack, how much history emanated out of Tampa, Florida.
Oh, I know. I know well. I mean, and this is the cradle of the exploration of the Southeast happened in St. Petersburg. Navarros landed there and began the first exploration of the Southeast, European exploration, I should say. You've got the Tony Janus legacy. He began all of commercial aviation. The cradle of commercial aviation is here. And even beyond that, people talk about Teddy Roosevelt having been here, and of course Andrew Jackson had such a big role in what happened here. And we had another president that used to live right over yonder there, and that was Zachary Taylor, who went on to become president. And people need to be made aware of that. And of course the History Center is doing a heck of a job.
Yeah, they are, and particularly given the nature of Florida, it's so transitory.
Yep.
That folks really didn't grow up learning about Tampa history and Florida history and the impact of the Seminoles and how we got to be where we are today. And this institution here, particularly located in the Riverwalk area, really is a jewel for us. And it's exciting. Folks who come here will learn in 2 or 3 hours a great primer of how Tampa came to be.
Yeah, and don't forget also, among the great historic moments, the twist began here.
I'm still trying to master it, Jack.
I never got that thing either.
But we had to fake it when we had to ask a girl to dance, and we weren't, we're surprised. Joy and Kathy, we are lucky they married us.
Oh, we are way above our level.
Oh, yeah.
As they say, we have outkicked our coverage
by a long shot.
Definitely.
Well, we're excited. We've got some great guests today. Joining us in just a minute will be George Howell, who was one of the driving forces behind the building of this great facility. George and Tom Touchton really are the guys for whom this became a lifelong pursuit. And they worked hard for a long period of time to get this done. And George is going to be joining us in just a minute, and he can tell us a little bit about how painful that birth was and how happy he is now that he's a papa. And I know he's a proud papa. So Jack, we'll be back in a second. Welcome back to the Mayor's Hour, Jack. We're back for another session with a great guest. Joining us today is Mr. George Howell, who was one of the driving forces behind the building of this great facility, the Tampa Bay History Museum. George is also a partner at Holland & Knight. I've been a friend for a very long period of time. But we're really here to talk about how this museum came to be. For those of us who have been around for a long time, Jack, we read about this for a long time.
Oh yeah, and it had a home before this that was a little inadequate, to understate it.
It was indeed, and the challenge to get the financing was a struggle, dealing with the various government agencies, but ultimately George and Tom and all the original backers persevered, and we now have a true jewel for Tampa. So George, welcome to the Mayor's Hour.
And welcome to the History Center.
It's good to be here. I have 2 little girls, and they love coming here. They learn something every time they come.
That's great, and thank you for your comment about my loving daughters, and I am a doting father, and not sure what was more interesting, raising twin girls or helping create the History Center.
Raising a History Center. Well, what about the history of the History Center? How was that? How did that germinate, and how did it grow into this magnificent facility?
Well, our beginnings, I don't think you'll be surprised with. Back in 1986, then County Commissioner Jan Platt became concerned. At the time, there was about 1,000 square foot museum on the second story of the old county courthouse. It was underfunded, it was run by volunteers, and there were unique and priceless artifacts there. I remember walking in there one day and they had a one-of-a-kind plat of 1856 of downtown Tampa, thumbtacked to paperboard.
Oh, boy.
And after that, Jan proposed creating a task force and led that effort by the county to look into the possibilities of building a history museum in Tampa. Ken Lewis of Bank of America was the first chair. And when Bank of America bought the banks out in Texas, he relocated, and Tom Touchton took over in 1989 and incorporated what was then the Tampa Hillsborough County History Museum, Inc., which wasn't quite as sexy as the Tampa Bay History Center, which Deanne Roberts, as our branding consultant, helped us with. But thanks to Jan, the effort took off. We brought in consultants, talked to community leaders. The interest was there. We felt like the financing was there. And Tom, I have to say, he's still very active on the board. He's working as hard or harder now than he was back in 1989. I can't say enough. And probably most importantly, he set the business model for the History Center, which I believe got us here.
Yeah.
And that was conservative in your finances, ethics, integrity. I think he even used the word, which was not in vogue then, transparency.
Oh, yes.
And always keep or exceed your promises. And we still operate on that same business model.
Well, George, I can remember because the city was a small player in it, but the funding largely came from the county and the CIT tax, if I'm not mistaken. And I know there were some trials and tribulations there, and I think the reason you were successful getting awarded that money was not only your perseverance and your tenacity, but because of that business model that you just talked about. I mean, your folks raised a significant amount of money for an escrow fund to make sure of the long-term viability of this before you went to the public sector for help. So tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, I think you're exactly right. And I think another reason that we are here today, sitting here, is that Tom came up with a concept that I don't believe has ever been presented before. And when we went to the county in 1998, we said, we want you to give us $17 million, 12 for the building, 5 for exhibits, but we want you to make us do 2 things. One is raise $11 million for a private operating endowment, and the other is to submit a business plan that has to be acceptable to the county. And I think that was critical in our success.
And of course, long term, obviously, the operating budget, the operating money is critical to making it a success in the long run.
Well, and again, back to Tom's comment about keeping your promises or exceeding them. We promised the county we would raise $11 million, when in fact we currently have a little over $15 million in pledges, and we have collected and under investment $10 million, and that remaining $5 will be paid over the next 2 years.
How does our Tampa Bay History Center compare with others around the country, or others, I won't say in the state of Florida because I've been to most of those and I know it's superior by a long shot, but elsewhere?
Well, I'm a little prejudiced, but I think we have the best story to tell and the oldest story.
That's the amazing thing, and the mayor was talking about it earlier. People aren't aware of the rich, rich history of this area. And it predates the Europeans coming here and everything else, but even beyond that, even with the Europeans coming here, it's the cradle of, I said, the exploration of the Southeast and commercial flight and the Civil War and the presidents who were involved in Fort Brooke and all of these things. And folks just aren't aware of it. You don't think of this. You think of Virginia, you think of Massachusetts, you think of all of these places, Jamestown, Plymouth Rock, and yet the cradle of civilization is right over there in St. Pete, right off Park
Well, you
Boulevard.
mentioned the Narvaez expedition from 1528, which was almost a century before the Mayflower and about 80 years before Jamestown.
And 10 years before DeSoto in
The
Bradenton.
first European exploration of the continental United States,
Yep.
starting out with 6 ships, 600 men, ending up with 4 still living who walked from Apalachicola to Mexico City and met up with Cortez, who had defeated the Aztecs in 1526. Fascinating story, and there's a book in our store.
Cabeza de Vaca, the guy who finally finished the mission after Narvaez was killed by the Indians.
Yeah, and De Vaca was actually on one of maybe 2 of Columbus's
Yeah.
expeditions.
So how did they end up here, George? I mean, tell us the story of how they ended. Were they looking for gold?
They were looking for gold. Immediately attacked by Indians, immediate food shortages, and the great thing from our perspective is it was very well recorded by Cabeza de Vaca after he got to Mexico City. He did an accounting, and also when he got back to Spain. So very well documented.
And you know, the interesting thing is, I mean, if you go to Jamestown, you go to Plymouth Rock, you see monuments, you see visitors, history, and all of this kind of thing. St. Augustine, where even the DeSoto Memorial down in Bradenton, and yet where Narvaez and where the exploration of America began by the Europeans of the southeast of our country began, it's not even publicly owned. It's privately owned, fortunately, by a gentleman who allows people to come on and tour it, but nobody knows about it. It's the best kept secret around.
Another great secret, historians have some confidence in the fact that when Narvaez didn't return to Spain, his wife sent a ship to find him, and they landed at Tampa Bay. And one of the people on that cruise was captured, Juan Ortiz, and Ortiz was living with the Aboriginal Indians at that time until DeSoto came. And the chief, who Narvaez had cut his nose off to show he meant business on the gold, was going to kill Ortiz immediately, and his daughter stepped in and begged her father not to kill him. They had him over a spit. They had him tied up to a spit, ready to cook him.
The real Pocahontas story.
Pocahontas story.
Yeah.
So what else do we have here, George? Tell us about some of the other exhibits that we have that are particularly unique to Tampa.
Well, and it's not chronological, and that's why we have the timeline on the second floor for those linear thinkers. But unique to Tampa, and as you know, Tampa, mainly through the cigar industry, was a melting pot of Cubans, Spaniards, Italians, Afro-Cubans, Germans, Jewish pioneers, like Herman Glogowski, who was mayor during a terrific period of growth. He was mayor when the railroad came to Tampa, when the hotel was built. You read very little about him. But in Coacachee, of course, telling the story of the Seminole Indian Wars. Fort Brooke here in Tampa was the headquarters that then President Andrew Jackson established for not only the defense of the west coast of Florida, but also to rid Florida of the Seminoles.
Yeah.
And that's not only a powerful story, a very expensive story. We spent about $1 million on that exhibit.
Wow.
It was created in London by a gentleman named Jonathan Bean, who fell absolutely head over heels about that story. But you get both perspectives, and we brought in some Seminole folks from their education staff because we wanted to make sure that we were telling the story right and correctly and accurately. But you get both perspectives. You get the perspective of a young Army Lieutenant, John Sprague, who kept meticulous journals, and then of course Coacachee. Most people think about Osceola when they think about the Seminoles, but Coacachee was at all the major battles. Cigar industry, very unique to Tampa. and kicked off by the Tampa Board of Trade, which is now, as you know, the Tampa Chamber of Commerce, was created in 1885 solely for the purpose of luring Mr. Ybor from Key West to Tampa. And stories of the mutual aid societies, cigar workers, when you think about Medicare today,
Right.
cigar workers paying a very small amount to cover their expenses from cradle to grave. The lector, who we have in there, the voice of E.J. Salcinez, by the way.
Another Tampa
And,
treasure.
and
Oh,
when,
yeah.
when we have classes come in, we actually put an actor up there. And
Really?
he talks about the cigar industry.
Yeah, we just filmed our last show at the Cuban Club. You were talking about the mutual aid societies.
And we talked also about what was really unique about Ybor City. Unlike other major cities where you had an Italian neighborhood and a German neighborhood and a Chinese neighborhood and a black neighborhood and all this, in Ybor City, and I think it's the only place in America really where you had them all living together. It was just one, it blended into one culture that ended up being Ybor culture. There's nothing like it in the world.
And created some great culinary dishes.
Oh,
Indeed.
yes
Yeah.
indeed,
Yeah.
yes indeed.
Yep, I use this frequently when I'm out talking, that how this community reminds me of a paella, because it's such a
That
eclectic
is,
mix
it's
of-
a great analogy that it's a paella of people.
Yeah, it is.
In here. Well, you know, the other thing that's happened along the way with the History Center, and I've been here several times, and Rodney Kite-Powell has done a great job in putting these things together, like most recently with sports, the sports thing you had on the history of professional sports in the Tampa Bay area. But the individual things that touch on things that the masses like, and they come down here. I mean, you come here, not to mention good eating, I might add, outside of the clinic.
Meatloaf
We come down
sandwich.
at night a lot, yeah. But
My favorite.
yeah, you're going to have to do one on the food, because we do have the unique food with the double
You know,
crabs.
actually, Richard Gonsmart does programs. I think he's getting ready to do his second one, actually cooking demonstrations and the recipes for some of their signature dishes.
Well, just for the benefit of the viewers, who's located here in this? Tell them about the restaurant that we have.
I don't know exactly when it happened, but I remember talking to Richard Gonsmart one day, and almost before I could get the ask out of my mouth, would you be interested? He said yes. It was just a natural marriage of
So that's the
a
Columbia
local,
restaurant.
a
Yeah,
local
yeah,
landmark,
yeah.
the Columbia Cafe.
Yep.
The oldest restaurant in Tampa, the oldest restaurant in Florida, and certainly one of the oldest in the United States.
It's a perfect marriage.
Yeah.
And it's also a combination of our Ybor
Yeah.
history as well.
You know, another thing I was going to mention was, and I don't know that school people are aware of this, but I know you do have education groups or groups trying to educate kids, field trips and things like that. This is a perfect place for something like that, because you do have everything in one building. I mean, you can feed them, you can educate them, you can do all of these things together.
Mary Ellen Elia has been on our board by name for about 4 years, and for our board meetings, she sends the head of social studies for Hillsborough County, and we have taken around 30,000 kids, school kids, through the museum since we opened our doors in 2009. And what's very gratifying to me is now we're seeing school children coming from Pasco, Polk, and Pinellas. So we're doing some outreach. And that, of course, is our mission. It helps our bottom line. We give discounted pricing, of course, but that's our mission, teach the kids.
So what's next for the museum? I mean, what are some of the future exhibits coming down the road? Can you tell us?
I'll let Rodney do that.
All right,
He
we'll let
does it
Rodney.
much better than I, but let me make one important point, if I may, because it really resulted in what you see today, and that is the philosophy of our outstanding President and CEO, C.J. Roberts. He has been a great mentor to me and the board, And you know, I never really got it about how do you take these artifacts and bring them alive and make them interesting. And CJ is fond of saying, not everybody loves history, but everybody loves a good story. And so what CJ has done here is create dynamic, powerful stories. And that's been kind of the key to our philosophy here. It can be fun to learn history. We do it every day.
Well, George, because of you and because of CJ and Tom and a lot of the supporters that have contributed to this great facility, this is a wonderful learning institution. But more importantly, it celebrates our great history and our colorful history and our dramatic history. And for that, we're eternally grateful. And so 50 years from now, when you and I are long gone, they will look at this facility and they said, George Howell had something to do with it, and we thank you for it.
Well, we are very grateful to the city in a number of ways. And you may or may not know this, but I believe our first seed money came from Sandy Friedman when she was mayor. Operating overhead has continued in this beautiful piece of property. It's 2.4 acres. That was very difficult to get because, as you know, it was purchased through a grant from the Florida Communities Trust created by Governor Martinez, and it's only for parks and open spaces. They had never allowed a building to be built. The mayor, Kathy Castor, and some others, we all went up to Jacksonville to a board meeting of the Florida Communities Trust, and I guess it didn't hurt having Bob Martinez on our board at that time.
Never hurts having the former
But
governor.
our argument was, parks are great, but if you put something there that people can go to, you'll get a lot more use out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, the FCT is now allowing destination points
It's
to
a
be built.
perfect symbiotic relationship
Yes.
with Okeechobee Park and the Riverwalk and this. Couldn't ask for more.
And Pam Maurio, you may not know, was on our board for about 6 years when she was supervisor of elections.
Yeah. Well, she's a history buff.
Yes.
We'll be right back. George, thank you.
Thank you.
Joining us in the next segment, Jack, is Rodney Kite-Powell and John Hedges, who are integral parts of the day-to-day operations of this. Rodney is a noted historian and a walking history lesson, so I'm looking forward to hearing from him. So bear with us. We'll be right back.
Well, the History Center is a project that's been around for a very long time. It took about 20 years from sort of start to finish to put it all together. One of the reasons being because we raised about $33 million from the private sector to add to the government money that was invested, $17 million from Hillsborough County and about $2.5 million from the City of Tampa, which came in the form of the land upon which we're sited. We're very excited about the location, the proximity of the convention center, the Riverwalk, the St. Pete Times Forum. It's an area that I think is going to become richer and richer over time. Being surrounded by Fort Brooke, Okeechobee Park is another great asset. Education is the long pole in our tent. It is the reason that we're here. It's the core of our mission. And we worked very closely as we were planning the History Center, planning the exhibitions. We worked very closely with both students and teachers because we recognized that a $50 million+ investment was going to be made in this museum. And so how do we maximize that value for area teachers and students? And so we spent a lot of time in small group and larger group settings soliciting their thoughts, their input. And I will tell you, the students were even more candid than the teachers were in terms of telling us what they wanted to see and what they didn't want to see. And then we incorporated much of that feedback into the exhibitions that you see as part of our permanent show today. And the reward for doing that has been great participation from the school district. We are seeing almost all 8th graders from the Hillsborough County School District coming through annually. We're also seeing a number of 4th grade students coming through. We see other grades as well, but those are the two big grades for us. And we're seeing strong participation now from Pinellas and also Pasco and other surrounding counties too. we have a super relationship with the Tampa Hillsborough County Library System. This project very much was built upon partnerships. There are many partnerships we have in place, but that's one of the most important to us. We have a satellite here in our building, a satellite of the library system called the Witt Research Center. It is open to the public. You don't have to pay an admission fee to come and use it. And what we have here are materials that reference our collections, the themes that we explore in our galleries, genealogical materials, city directories, maps, other materials that people researching this area's history might want to access. We also have access to all of the subscription databases that you would find in any of the library branches within the county. We have a librarian, it's staffed by a professional librarian from the system here on site. So we have expertise to help our researchers as they're working through and trying to find that information. We have several speaker programs, the most prominent of which is our Florida Conversation series. We hold about 10 events a year as part of that series. That's done with another very important partner to us, the University of South Florida, specifically the University of South Florida Libraries and the Florida Studies Center. We do a number of things with USF throughout the year, including publishing an academic journal, hosting this area's history fair, outreach to schools. We have a branch of the Columbia restaurant here, the Columbia Cafe, which is intended to sort of replicate the look and feel of the original 1905 era Columbia Cafe. So a lot of our visitors will come, tour the galleries for a little while, go have lunch at the cafe, and then come back. It was important for us to partner with the Columbia restaurant, in part because we wanted to have our restaurant experience be a continuation of what our guests were seeing in the galleries. So for example, when they're going through our Cigar City exhibit and they're learning about the rich food culture of this area, particularly of Ybor City and West Tampa, and they've learned about our Cuban sandwiches and our café con leches and all of those things that make this area so special, they can then go out to the Columbia and they can taste it, which is sort of the ultimate immersive experience in a museum setting, if you will. The museum store, one of the things we wanted to do was to make it an outlet for area artists and artisans who are making uniquely Florida items and to be able to sell those through our store. So there are items that you can't get anywhere else, which is pretty neat. And then we have the typical things that you might find in your average museum, logoed merchandise, for example, and books and things for children and the like. But I'm the most excited about those things that are created by artists and artisans living in our community. I think that's neat. We went from a very small amount of members when we opened. We quadrupled almost immediately our membership base and have continued to grow that since. We do a lot of, one of the challenges is once people have come to a museum, how do you get them to come back? And so the things that we're doing to incentivize repeat visits, 3-4 traveling exhibitions a year, and we have some exciting ones coming up in the next month or so. Active programs, and we're doing programs here for preschool children, we're doing programs here for seniors, so there's a lot for our members to choose from. You can come and you can learn, you can take a genealogy workshop, you can learn how to care for historical materials that you might have in your own family, or you can come and learn how to make a 1905 salad with the staff of the Columbia. So it's a really diverse offering that we're able to give to our members. Through the Smithsonian partnership, we're also able to, for a modest increase in price in your base membership, you can become a member of the Smithsonian, which gets you discounts in the Smithsonian store, the Smithsonian magazine, as well as free admission to those properties within the Smithsonian system that do charge admission. The ones in Washington typically don't, but there are some other locations that do. So always working to try to make those membership packages richer. We also have reciprocal programs. We have reciprocity with 600 other museums around the country, so you can take out your Tampa Bay History Center member card at a number of other institutions and get free admission when you're traveling around as well. And we're soon to celebrate our third year anniversary, and we're just getting started. During that first 3 years, we've learned a lot more about our audiences and our new building and our exhibits. We've identified new stories, collected new artifacts, and so in the next 3 years, I think you're going to see a lot of exciting things coming online, be they new programs, traveling exhibits, temporary exhibits, trying to build upon that solid foundation that we've put together in the first 3 years. I think we're standing in my favorite exhibit, and I think it's many people's favorite exhibit. It's my favorite for a lot of reasons, some of which are kind of behind-the-scenes sort of stories. But I think Kawakachi's story, first of all, a powerful story about a Seminole war chief who was a contemporary of Osceola's. He was with Osceola at most of the key moments of the Second Seminole War. They were captured and imprisoned together. Kawakachi escaped from prison along with Osceola. He was recaptured, brought back here to Fort Brooke, which was the predecessor to today's Tampa, found himself bargaining for his life. He was told by the authorities, the military stationed here, that unless he were successful in recalling his warriors from the swamps and the hammocks in X number of days, he'd be executed. He was successful in recalling at least enough of his warriors to satisfy the authorities here. His reward was he was taken from here to Egmont Key. He was reunited with his family, whom he thought had perished in an earlier conflict, put on board a ship, sent to New Orleans to ultimately be part of the Trail of Tears and relocation to Arkansas and points farther west. It is a story that was documented, though, by a young junior Army officer here named John Sprague, who was really fairly critical of what his government was doing. He didn't publish his writings while he was in the service, but he left the service shortly thereafter and published his book. And so we took his writings and brought Kawakachi's story to life in something that we call an immersive theater. And it is a theater where you are surrounded by full-scale dioramas, multi-screen kind of approach, and I think I like it as an exhibit because it is a great example of marrying a terrific story with some wonderful technology and really making it come to life. The better we understand the past, we talk about, well, you won't maybe repeat the mistakes of the future, but I think we'll also find things that give us inspiration to take on those challenges of the future. So I think it's awfully important that we study history and keep that in the forefront of our minds and appreciate the fact that we live in a place that has a very, very rich history.
Back.
Oh man, I love this place.
This is great. And to all of you, thanks for joining us once again. This is, we are in the Tampa Bay History Center. Now, we are going to show you some really, as my 6-year-old would say, Daddy, this is really cool stuff. And so I am here today, obviously, with my pal and co-host Jack Harris, but also with Rodney Kite-Powell, Tampa's walking, living, breathing historian, and John Hedges, who is the mastermind behind this traveling exhibit that Rodney's going to talk to us about. We've got some artifacts here and some costumes from some of our favorite actors and favorite movies. I don't think my kids would recognize any of these movies, Jack.
They're back in our era.
Yeah, but you and I could, sneak into a leather jacket here too and pretend to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, you can pretend to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, Rodney, tell us. First of all, thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for being here.
Tell us what you do at the museum, but more importantly, tell us about this exhibit that we're standing in right now.
Well, I'm the Curator of History here at the History Center, and so I'm kind of like you say, in charge of the history and then teaching people about the history of the area, also supervising over the artifacts and things like that, and dealing with exhibits, both exhibits that we build ourselves and exhibits that we bring in, like this show, Out of This World, which comes from the EMP Museum in Seattle, Washington. And Out of This World is really going to be a fantastic exhibit for people of the Tampa Bay area to see. Like you said, there's artifacts from movies that definitely we all remember growing up and seeing. We have the Wizard of Oz, the witch's hat from Wizard of Oz. We have.
You don't have those shoes? I can't
no, those are in the Smithsonian. We don't. So we don't.
I saw those. Yeah, that's the one my 6-year-old loved.
Yeah, but we have Darth Vader's costume. We have Obi-Wan Kenobi's cloak. We have Luke Skywalker's flight jacket. We've got some great things from Indiana Jones, from Star Trek. So it's a really fantastic exhibit.
You got Charlie Miranda in here?
Well, you know what? We have a case.
We have a case ready for
him. Yeah.
Charlie, we're waiting for you. Get back to work soon.
How did you become, as a history major, I used to joke about someday I want to grow up and be a historian. But you've done that. How did you get into this gig?
Surely by accident.
He flunked math.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was a finance major at Florida, and I didn't like it.
Yeah. See, he flunked math.
I didn't flunk, but I didn't like it. And so I changed my major to history and came home for summertime before my senior year at Florida. And the History Center had just opened its little preview center on Harbor Island. And I never thought about museum work, never thought about being a historian, but I fell in love with it and graduated, came back home, and they hired me, and that was 16 years ago.
Wow.
You've had several traveling exhibits. I know most recently you had the professional sports one. and others that have come along here too. And we talked about some of the background of movies, and I think you've got one coming up in the not too distant future. George was telling us about movie making in Florida too.
Well, that's a program we're going to have in conjunction with the exhibit on some of the movies that were made in Florida. Our next exhibit after this one, which I don't want to discount this one, this is going to be a great one, but the one coming after this is also going to be really interesting and a kind of a departure from us. It's called Spies, Traitors, and Saboteurs. It's an exhibit
Washington, D.C.
Exactly, from the Spy Museum.
Spy Museum up there.
Yeah, so we've got really two really big exhibits in a row. And so from Out of This World going to Spies, and so it's going to be a great winter for us.
Well, John, welcome to Tampa.
Thank you very much.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and more importantly, tell us about this exhibit.
All right. I am the traveling exhibitions manager for the EMP Museum in Seattle, Washington. And we have a robust traveling exhibitions program, as well as local exhibits and programs in Seattle that we produce. This exhibit talks a bit about character creation and how costumes help to, help to create the characters that we all love and recognize, or love to hate, for instance. Darth Vader, Indiana Jones, characters from Blade Runner, etc.
So how do you get all of these artifacts?
Well, most of these objects
TMZ?
are in
Craigslist?
most of these objects are in the collection of our museum's founder, who's Paul Allen, who's one of the co-founders of
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We're really lucky that he likes to share his collection with the public, and he wants people to be able to see the things that he has in his collection.
And do you buy them from the studios, or do you go to Harrison Jones and say, I'll pay you $1,000 for your jacket?
Most were purchased at auction.
Really?
Yes.
And there are auction houses that do this for a living, that sell Hollywood-type things?
Yeah, you see that from time to time. I mean, there'll be news stories on it about they're having an event, and they're going to auction off Marilyn Monroe's. Some Marilyn Monroe stuff was up for auction just a couple of weeks ago, I noticed. And Christie's is having that, and you see that from time to time, and you wonder who's buying that, or why is it now that they're selling it, or what's the deal on this? I guess they're selling it to make money, and that kind of thing.
Well, I haven't gotten past the Meekum car auction yet on Saturday nights. I do watch that, because when I can't sleep, I turn on the Meekum car auction.
No, maybe a car exhibit here someday.
Maybe, yeah.
Be a little press board. Yeah. But the movies, you talk about the movies here, and I can't wait for that to come around here, because we do have, and people aren't aware of it, a pretty strong history of movie making in the state of Florida, and even in the Tampa Bay area, going way back Weeden Island, at one time having had a major movie studio there. I think they only cranked out about 3 films, but at the time, that was to become what is now Hollywood.
Exactly, in the original Sun City, where Sun City Center is now, was going to be a Hollywood studio.
Another place to become a Hollywood studio.
Exactly.
And it makes you look to the future, and you look at what a Dolphin Tale did, and you think, why don't we have a lot more movies here? And maybe somebody needs to get the attention of Governor Scott and say, there is a good industry to bring to the state of Florida and to the Tampa Bay area, because you've got a lot of people interested in that. But maybe if we can interest people by showing them the past of movies in Florida, to show them that the climate here is perfect for movie making year-round. And you've got all of these environments that are perfect for movie making, from Tarpon Springs to the Veldt in East Hillsboro to the big cities to the beaches. It's just a great environment for making movies, that they realized that back in the early 1900s up to the mid-1900s.
Exactly. There's still, I think, monkeys living in Florida that are descended from the monkeys from the Tarzan movies.
There you go, Tarzan movies, for sure.
So, John, tell us some of the exhibits that are here. Tell us about some of the artifacts. What movies are represented? What characters are here?
Star Trek is well represented in this exhibit, including Captain Kirk, Jean-Luc Picard, and the Gorn, which is my personal favorite. The exhibit is divided into sections such as Caped Crusaders, Heroes and Villains, creating the character. So Batman is one of the more popular objects in the show.
And Robin.
Batman and Robin, yes.
Don't forget Robin.
Star Wars, Star Trek, as I mentioned. We've got 2 different versions of the Terminator, and so many others.
Well, it's great to have a Paul Allen who can just go out, unlike here where you got to find the money, put it in a budget and everything. He said, Paul, can you go get us a good jacket from the Terminator?
There you
okay,
go.
it's done.
We're lucky to have him.
And so this exhibit travels all over the country and resides in similar locations to this in different cities?
It does. This show has been on tour since 2008, and it's actually on its 13th venue.
Wow.
So we're nearing the end of the tour.
Wow. And then you get to go home?
That's correct.
I was going to say, it's a pretty good gig for you. We got better weather for a history museum than you have up there.
It's nice and warm. I'm looking forward to cooler temps.
Come on now, you're going to miss us.
Oh, we'll have them soon.
Now, who's put you on TV anywhere else?
That's right. That's
First
true.
time.
All right, there you go. There you go.
It's a great start. But this, on a day-to-day basis, what kind of crowds are you attracting? Because I know I come in under different circumstances. I've come with special events, and we got a lot of people here. I've come sometimes when nothing special is going on, but you find a lot of people who are out here. And I've come late at night when it's closed and you can still eat.
Exactly. Yeah, we're very fortunate that we have a great cross section of the community who've found the History Center and who really enjoy coming here. So we see young parents bringing their children here, as you mentioned. Your kids love coming here. We've got some great programs for adults, both in the mornings for retired adults and in the evenings for folks who are still out there, working for a living. We've got, of course, as you all mentioned earlier, school groups. Lots and lots of school kids come through here. So we really have a great cross section, which I think is nice. That way, we're not in a niche where we have to worry about continuing that niche. We really offer a lot of things, and so it's been a great audience.
Well, tell us about the physical aspects of the center itself. The number of floors, how many permanent exhibits, and then the traveling exhibits. What composes the History Center?
All right, well, we have 2 floors of permanent gallery exhibit space, and that really kind of takes you on the tour of history from 10,000 years ago up to the present time. We do it thematically, and it's about 17,000 square feet of total space, hundreds, if not close to 1,000 objects. Some again go back thousands of years, and some go up to the present. And we've got some tickets and other things from when the Rays were in the World Series, from when the Lightning won the Stanley Cup.
You have Leroy Selman's jersey here, don't you?
We have Leroy Selman's jersey on loan from the Football Hall of Fame. And actually, our collections manager, Travis Puterbaugh, has just been in touch with the Buccaneers about getting another Selman jersey that we can keep here permanently. Because we have a lot of things that are on loan that eventually we'll have to go back. And so we really want to make sure that we honor people like Leroy, who was just an incredible citizen of the area. And so it's people like that and stories like that we want to be able to tell. And in addition to that 2 floors of permanent gallery space, we have this space, about a 2,000 square foot temporary gallery where we can produce our own shows, like the sports exhibit that you helped us with, Jack.
That was terrific.
And we have a Civil War exhibit we did before that, and then we can bring in shows like Out of This World. And so it really allows us a lot of flexibility to touch on topics that we didn't touch on, at least in any kind of great detail on the second floor or for the first floor, or things that we never would talk about. We wouldn't normally have a costume exhibit at the History Center, but it's going to be a really popular show, and we're really looking forward to really kind of expanding that audience that maybe would be a little reluctant about coming to the Tampa Bay History Center because maybe they aren't from here, maybe they don't realize that we do have such a rich history, and so we'll kind of hook them with this show, and then we'll kind of finish them off with our compelling story.
Do you get much traffic from the conventions and the hotels around? Do people wander down the Riverwalk and find you and say, wow, this is pretty cool?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because just this week when we're filming this, there's a big nurses convention, and we've had a lot of folks coming in from that just off the street, and we also, I think they had an evening event here where they used Columbia Cafe, and they had a great dinner here. And so we also, as the time of this filming, the Florida Association of Museums is having their annual conference here. And it's the first time that FAM has been here in 10, 15 years. And they did that because of not just the History Center opening up, but because of the new Art Museum opening up, the Glacier, and the other really wonderful amenities that we have here.
So what are you going to do for the Republican National Convention? You're going to do a Democratic candidate exhibit here?
We're going to be inside that security zone.
Yes.
And so the average public probably is not going to be able to come to us during
But you'll
that
be able to
10-day
host
period.
parties and things
Exactly,
like that.
yeah. I think we're in talks with some folks about renting the entire space.
Wow.
All the public spaces at least. The galleries will be open for the folks who can make it in here, the people who come into the convention and, kind of wives, husbands, and kids who want to come by. And then we're going to probably be in the national spotlight with whoever rents us out. And so we're looking forward to it.
Good.
It's going to be a lot of traffic
Oh,
but
yes.
it's going to be
We'll
fun.
charge them a lot of money, would you please?
Oh, yeah.
We'll do our best.
The other thing is that people can come and have meetings and things like that, because I've been at a couple of meetings here where people use the facilities, and oftentimes a large segment of that group has never been here before, and it's like, wow, I didn't know this was this nice. You know, this is pretty stunning.
Yeah, well, Tico Hall allows us to really rent out the facility, and we can fit about 200 people in there dining style, and we can fit, I think, 300 theater style for programs and lectures and things like that. So folks will come in, again, utilize the Columbia for their catering, and lots and lots of groups that, like you say, wouldn't normally come in, or maybe you haven't been kind of exposed to the History Center. It's a good first step, and they say, oh, we know where you are now, so we can come back. And we get a lot of folks who do come in and say, you know, I was here at a meeting, I was here at a lecture, and I really wanted to see the facility, and they come in later.
Well, Rodney, we appreciate everything that you do every day to put this place on the map, to tell the Tampa story, to tell the history of the Bay Area. John, welcome to Tampa again. Thanks for bringing this great exhibit down here, and give Mr. Allen our best. And we've got a little deficit that we could use some help fixing. So if he would be interested, I'll sell him my jacket if you would like. But we're going to be right back. We've got some video coming up, and Jack and I will be back for some final comments. So stay with us.
Collection storage is it's right in the middle of the building. It's closed access to all but about 3 or 4 people on the entire staff. We have great security back here. It's only accessible to a few people. It's climate controlled. There's no windows. 95% of our entire collection is right here in collection storage. The rest being out in the gallery. And basically, what comes out of here depends on what kind of exhibit we're putting on. If we're doing a special show such as the Sports in Tampa Bay show that we just did, the sports-related pieces back here that we wouldn't normally have on display will come out into the gallery. Most of our donations and artifacts that we get come from just regular people out in the community. Some who have a long-time affiliation and association with the History Center, and others who've heard about us and think they have things that they'd like to contribute. If you can think of it, we probably have it. We have maps, we have photographs back here, we have clothing, we have all manner of textiles, everything related to the cigar industry. Unique in the sense that we can cover just about any aspect of local history that you can think of, and you can find it somewhere in this room. On this table here we have several pieces that were loaned for our previous exhibit on sports, belonging to Tino Martinez and to several other local athletes. Right here we have a bat that belonged to Pete Rose that he used in 1978 during his 44-game hitting streak. And Pete gave this to Charlie Miranda, who's the local politician, and we had this on display during the exhibit. This is a jersey that belonged to Tino Martinez during his time here with the Tampa Bay Rays. This is a great jersey. This is a Tampa Catholic number 19, which belonged to Tino Martinez before he went on to greater things at Jefferson High School and obviously UT and Major League Baseball. But this was his, Tampa Catholic. And this is the Silver Slugger Award, won by Tino Martinez in 1997 when he was with the New York Yankees. And Tino was kind enough to loan many of his personal artifacts that he collected during his career, and as well as contacting several other of his friends, Tony La Russa, Fred McGriff, Wade Boggs, Dwight Gooden, and they contributed many of their personal items for the exhibit as well. So what we're doing here is we're preparing to return them to Tino, so we're setting them out, doing some conditioning on them, and getting ready to wrap them up. This is a plaque that was awarded to Lamar Sparkman, who was the designer of what we know as Buccaneer Bruce. Sparkman came up with the concept. he was given this plaque by Hugh Culverhouse for his contributions to the Buccaneers. And to this day, it remains what most people remember Lamar Sparkman for, was creating the iconic orange and red Buccaneer logo. Right here, obviously this is a very timely piece. This is a Lamar Sparkman illustration of Leroy Selman, who passed away last month. Selman was obviously an iconic figure in the community, and he was a very common subject of Lamar Sparkman's during his career in the 1980s. This is the mini Stanley Cup that belongs to the Tampa Bay Lightning. We had this on display here at the History Center for the last 3 months during Sports in Tampa Bay. Whenever a team wins the Stanley Cup, they obviously don't get to keep the original, so they're awarded a miniature version. But this is the one that belongs to the Lightning, and we are keeping it here for another few days while the Forum undergoes its renovation. And after that, it'll obviously go back to the Lightning and be on display once again at the St. Pete Times Forum. We have all of the Lightning's individual awards. Whenever a player wins an individual award, such as the Rocket Richard or the Lady Bing, the player gets a version of the trophy, and so does the team. This is a World Series trophy that belongs to Lou Piniella, and this is the one he won in 1990 as the manager of the Cincinnati Reds. It was a really fun experience putting together the sports exhibit this past summer. I'm a huge sports fan. It's something that I grew up with around here, following the Bucks and then the Lightning. There's so much history from the Tampa Bay community. If you think of Lou Piniella, Tino Martinez, Al Lopez, and it was an honor to put it all together and to showcase them in a new way. And as well as Lamar Sparkman, people grew up with his cartoons in the Tampa Tribune, and it was nice to be able to put them out there for people to see it after a long time. We are on the second floor of the Tampa Bay History Center in the year-round play gallery, and I'm standing in front of our sports case, and here you can see the jersey of former Buccaneer Leroy Selman, which is on loan to us from the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. The football history here is pretty rich too. The high school rivalries go way back, Plant and Hillsborough, for example, and then you had college football starting in the 1940s with the University of Tampa, and to the present day with USF. Not to mention the Buccaneers coming around in 1976, and really the Florida Gators for a long time were considered the local team. They played numerous exhibitions here in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s. So Florida's a football state, Tampa's definitely a football city. We have a few pieces here that represent USF athletics. We have a jersey from the original year, 1997. And hopefully at some point we can get a nice bowl trophy from the bowls that we can put on display here. They've racked up a few in the last few years, and it'd be nice to see one here in our case. The trophy we have here represents the Tangerine Bowl. This trophy is the one that University of Tampa won in 1972. They defeated Kent State at the Tangerine Bowl in Orlando, and this was the last bowl trophy that the Spartans won before the program disbanded. Tampa is obviously known for its baseball, predating the Rays. We had spring training here, we had local cigar leagues, we had a local Negro League team in the 1930s and 40s. Baseball has been played here for a long, long time, and some of the pieces we have in this case represent that tradition. With the arrival of the Lightning about 20 years ago, we've had the good fortune of winning a Stanley Cup, hosting an all-star game, and being in the playoffs a couple times. So hockey right now is as entrenched in our sports identity as anything else. Highlight got started here in the 1950s, and it was before professional sports. It was the thing to do on weekend nights here in Tampa at the old Fronton. Highlight was a very popular sport. It was something that people could watch for entertainment purposes or to wager a little bit of money. And unfortunately, it's not here anymore, but it was very much a part of the local fabric for about 30 or 40 years.
Well, welcome back. This is the final segment of the Mayor's Hour. Jack, this is exciting. I mean, I have a lot of fun every time I come here.
Oh, me too, being an old history major, and I love the history of the Tampa Bay area, again, which so few people know about, and it's so rich from the exploration of the Southeast, beginning here, the cradle of European exploration of America, the commercial aviation beginning here. The first night flight ever was over Tampa, and people aren't aware of that. And the twist began here. We were talking
Let me see it.
off camera.
Good, go.
I don't think I have to have a towel to be able to do it. To do it right. But the twist did start here. Some kids were seen by the guy that wrote the twist, later went to Chubby Checker. We were even talking about maybe someday, Rodney was saying maybe we can have a twist exhibit or something like that, or do something around that, but who knows. Hey, incidentally, I want to bring something up that's been going on here, that's been an ongoing saga at City Council over something you wanted to do when you first became mayor, and that was to kind of clean up the intersections, to get the panhandlers out of the intersections, which they've done in so many communities around here, which unfortunately they seem to have all come here. But they seem to be a little stalled out in City Council now.
Yeah, they do, Jack, and that's unfortunate. I think everyone recognizes it's a problem. I just don't understand why the political will is not there to deal with it. I can't do it unilaterally, otherwise I would have.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have gone to a 7-day ban the first day I was in office. Because it's an ordinance, it has to be passed by City Council.
Yeah.
And you've got some good folks down there who have different opinions as to whether or not it's a problem. I happen to disagree with 3 of them at least.
Yes.
And so it deadlocked 3-3 yesterday at City Council. So 2 weeks from now, when folks are watching this, they'll have an opportunity to weigh in at City Council, because City Council is going to come back and vote. Hopefully the 4th vote will be there for this, because we all recognize that it's not the end of homelessness.
Right.
But we also recognize that it's clearly inappropriate, and it's a health issue, it's a traffic issue, it's a safety issue. It is wrong on all fronts.
It's a quality of life issue for everybody else. And I do a lot of traveling and have been in a lot of cities, and I've never seen it to the extent that it is here now. Even when we had it in St. Petersburg, it wasn't as bad as it is here now. You cannot go to any corner without finding at least one, and usually 2, 3, or 4, depending on how big the intersection is.
And it's, I mean, we've got to get our arms around the homelessness question in a very holistic, comprehensive fashion. But it starts with sending a message that we're not going to tolerate the deviant behavior that we're seeing now.
Yeah.
And so we've got to get the medians clean. We can deal with the larger issues, but that's the first step, because you cannot allow that, because you're right. That sends a signal that that type of behavior, and worse, is permitted, it's encouraged, and it will be festering. And so we've got to stop it and stop it now. And so hopefully City Council will do the right thing. We need that one vote. If you want to weigh in, 274-8131 at the Tampa City Council.
That's somebody's home number.
No, it's not.
Council number.
But Jack, thanks for bringing that up. You know, this has been another great show. It's always a pleasure to be with my friend Jack Harris. Listen to him on the morning, WFLA. He talks about a lot of these issues every morning with his cohort in crime, Ted Webb. But he's been great for doing this this is his 3rd mayor.
That's it. Yep.
Yep. We all kind of blend together after a while. Yes. But to all of you out there, thanks for watching. Come down to the Tampa History Center. You won't regret it. It's a wonderful place. Bring your kids down. Bring your family down. Learn about the history of this great city, and you'll understand why we are what we are and why we're doing so well. So come on down. Look forward to seeing you next month. And Jack, I'll see you on the road.
Oh, you got it.
All right.
For sure.
Yeah. See you.